This doesn't look like an ordinary car, but because it is transporting passengers, you still label it one. This is function bias, where an object is labelled according to its function. An infant, however, probably wouldn't label it a car because it doesn't have four wheels. Infants use shape bias, where an object is labelled by its shape. Prior research has established that infants develop a shape rather than a function bias because shape is easier to perceive and understand comparatively to function. But why does this matter? A groundbreaking study by Professor Smith and colleagues demonstrated that infants could use shape bias to grow their noun vocabulary. In 2021, Professor Zuniga Montanez and colleagues developed upon Smith's findings through using the same procedure, but for the first time ever, replaced shape with function bias. Zuniga Montanez had two aims. First, to determine whether teaching infants to focus on function during object labeling created function bias, and second, whether function training benefits vocabulary growth as shape training did. 24 17-month-old infants were divided into two groups. The function training group were first given a novel word referring to three objects presented to them. Second, researchers demonstrated two of the three objects had the same function, whilst the third did not. This was repeated weekly for 7 weeks. The control group played with the same stimulus objects, but without guidance. For assessment, the training demonstration was replicated with previously used and unfamiliar stimuli. Participants were tasked with retrieving the object with the same function. The more choices made on the basis of function, the higher the score. Vocabulary growth was assessed using a questionnaire completed by the infant's parents. Results showed the function training group used function bias to label the familiar and unfamiliar stimuli more than the control group. Both groups demonstrated increased vocabulary growth, but there was no difference in growth rate between the two. Authors assumed this was because the control group used shape bias, meaning shape and function bias were as effective as each other. The authors noted two major conclusions. First, infants can develop a function bias used for successful noun learning, even for unfamiliar words. Second, shape bias emerges over function bias because perception is easily accessible. It is not because shape is simple to understand, as infants could understand complex information about function. Before this study, it was unknown if infants could use function bias. Now, Zuniga Montanez has discovered its use for word learning in a population at a critical point in their linguistic development. The authors state vocabulary is critical for infants' communication, social interaction, and future academic performance. Parents and educators could use this strategy to assist infants with poor language skills. Because function training was as effective as shape training at enhancing vocabulary growth, it could be used in populations which don't naturally develop shape bias. This could potentially allow infants with autism spectrum disorder or late talkers to benefit from improved linguistic skills.